What's up guys, we're back in the shop. I got the 883 on the lift. Today I'm going to show you how to change out your rocker box gaskets and your umbrella valves. Keep in mind, I will be performing the service on both the rear and the front, but for the video, I'm only going to show you the service on the rear. The methods and the procedures are identical. As always, please refer to your Harley-Davidson service manuals for proper procedures, torque specs, and capacities. As you can see, I've already removed the gas tank, air cleaner, and seat off the bike. You will need to do this to perform this service. If you're not sure how to do this, consult your service manual. To do this service, you're just going to need a couple of tools. 10mm wrench, .3/16 Allen head socket, 1/2 inch socket, 7/16 socket, a couple of ratchets, a driver, and a 3/16 Allen wrench. This is a 3/16 rocker box Allen wrench. As you can see, it's got a very shallow Allen on a ratchet. This tool makes it really easy to get at those valve cover bolts at the top. If you have one of these, use it. It's awesome. If you don't, you can use a regular Allen wrench, and if you need to, you can even trim it down a little bit. And the last tool, a torque wrench. You've got to have a torque wrench to do this service. If you don't, do not attempt this service. Before you perform this service on your bike, make sure the bike is cold and your battery is disconnected. First thing you're going to want to do is take off the 4 Allen head cap screws. You got 2 on each side of the frame. Now that you have all 4 bolts removed, we're going to go ahead and take off the valve covers. Start with the first top cover. Just shimmy it out. Tolerances are a little tight, but everything does come out. Next is the middle one. Just gotta shimmy it out. Go ahead and remove the inner gasket. Once you have the upper and middle rocker boxes removed, you will find bolts on the lower rocker. The first 2 bolts you're going to want to remove are these Allen cap screws. Next, we're going to remove the 7/16 bolts. You've got one towards the front and one in the rear. When removing this bolt, make sure you grab the washer that's underneath that bolt and remove them together. And don't forget the third one. And the same as the previous 2, make sure you grab that washer with that bolt when removing it. Now that you've got the 2 Allen cap screws and the 3 7/16 head screws out, now we can remove the 4 rocker bolts. Now, this is very important. You must remove these rocker bolts evenly. Do not take one out completely and then the other. You've got to do them evenly because this rocker box is holding pressure of the valve springs and the push rods. So break them each loose and then evenly loosen them in a star pattern. You'll notice As you loosen these, the lower rocker box will start to lift off the head. That's good. Now that you've got them all broken loose and they're all gapped off the rocker box, that means you've already relieved all the pressure. You can see it's loose. Now you can go ahead and just remove each bolt individually. And remember, only remove each bolt individually once the pressure has been relieved from the rocker box. Now that you've got the rocker box completely loose, it's time to remove it. Before you just pull it out, I like to remove the push rods first just to make it a little easier in removing this lower rocker box. So just shimmy the lower rocker over, reach in and grab the exhaust push rod and set it aside. Now keep in mind, the exhaust push rod and the intake push rod are two different lengths. The exhaust is marked by 3 bands. This would be the top, this would be the bottom. You're gonna wanna put it in the way it came out. So just set this aside. Now for the intake exhaust, or intake push rod. You'll notice this one has 1 band. All right, just shimmy this out. Set it to the side. Once you got your lower rocker box off, it's a good time to prep your mating surface for your gasket. I like to use some Scotch-Brite, just lightly rub, paying attention not to knock any debris inside the head. The reason I prep the surface is so you get a good mating surface with a new gasket. That way you don't have to do this job again. That's what you're after, a nice, clean, smooth surface. You're gonna wanna do this to the other side as well. And there you go, your mating surface is totally clean. You're also going to want to prep the bottom of the lower rocker box as well. Remove the gasket. This one happens to be a 1-piece metal gasket, comes off relatively easy. You may find you have a paper gasket, and when those come off, they tend to stick. So, just wipe down the oil and do the same thing you did on the head. Just clean up some of that leftover gasket material. This may seem tedious and time consuming, but it's very important to get these gasket surfaces clean for your new gasket, or else you'll just have to do this all over again. And this is what you're after, a nice, clean, uniform surface. All right, now that you've got everything clean and ready to be reassembled, first step is put your new gasket on your head. Now, these gaskets can go either way, front, back, upside down, left, right, it doesn't matter. Just go ahead and just set it on there. Then you're going to want to take your lower valve cover, shimmy it into place, and again, just set it on there. Now you're going to want to install your push rods. Remember, 1 band, intake. Three bands for the exhaust. Okay. Before you reinstall your bolts, Make sure they're clean, wipe them down, take any excess oil off. Go ahead and just drop in the 4 rocker bolts. Go ahead and give them just a little bit of threaded. Just a couple of threads, just to line everything up. Don't torque anything down. Then take the other 3. Same thing, just a couple of threads to make sure everything's lined up. Don't forget those last 2 Allens. Again, just a couple of threads to make sure everything's lined up. All right, you've got all bolts threaded in. Nothing's tight, but everything is lined up. So we're gonna want to tighten the 4 rocker bolts first, and you're gonna wanna tighten them in a star pattern. You can go ahead and take them to the meeting surface. Okay, all 4 are snug, but they're not torqued down. So this is where it's important. Crisscross pattern evenly. Okay, so all 4 are snug. Now you're gonna wanna take a torque wrench and torque them to the proper torque spec listed in the service manual. For this next step, you need to use a torque wrench. I cannot stress this enough. If you do not have a torque wrench, borrow one, rent one, or buy one. This is very important. So these 4 bolts, we need to torque to 15 to 18 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern. All right, it was that easy. I always like to just double check. All right. Next, we're going to tighten the 3 smaller bolts. Same as last time. You can just get them down seated, and then we'll torque them with a torque wrench. Once you have those 3 bolts seated, now it's time to torque them down. The service manual calls for 10 to 13 foot-pounds of torque. Alrighty. Now we're going to tighten the last 2 bolts. So just get it seated. Okay, the service manual calls for 90 to 120 inch-pounds for these 2 bolts. Please be careful. These are 1/4-20 bolts. They will snap easy. As you can see, I'm having a hard time getting my tool in here. This bolt is, the torque spec on these bolts, while they're crucial, they're not as crucial as the other 7. So if you can't get your torque wrench in there, don't worry about it, just get it tight. After your lower rocker box is all torqued down, nice and snug, it's time to start to set up the stack. Before you install the gaskets, you need to change the umbrella valve in the middle rocker. Now, the umbrella valve always sits closest to the carburetor. For the rear head, the umbrella valve is on this side, and for the front head, it'll be on the opposite side. We're just concentrating on the rear head right now, so all you got to worry about is this one. So pop that umbrella valve out, discard it, drop a new umbrella valve in, and just make sure it pulls through, and that's in there. Remember, umbrella valve closest to the carburetor. The first gasket that you're going to put in is the one that goes between the lower rocker and the middle rocker box. Just set it in to the grooves. Okay. Now take your middle rocker box, shimmy it in, just set it on. Next one is the middle gasket or center gasket. Then we're going to put the gasket that goes on top of the middle box and below the top box. I know that probably sounds confusing. All right. Now we're going to put the top rocker box cover on. Again, make sure your sealing surfaces are nice and clean. Now, the upper rocker box definitely goes in one way. You can see you have 2 bolts that are closer to each other, 2 bolts that are farther from each other. The 2 closer bolts go on the pipe side. Just slide it on in there. So now we're going to drop in the top bolts. You want to put new sealing washers on these bolts. Make sure you take off the old ones and put the new ones on. Slide that in, drop the bolt in, just get a couple of threads going. Don't tighten it yet. Okay, so you've got the 4 bolts in, everything's loose. As you can see, this next step is very important. We're going to tighten these top 4 bolts, and it's going to sandwich the top and the middle rocker box to the lower one. It's very important that you align everything properly so you don't have any leaks. So get it aligned, hold it with your hand, and then start tightening. Okay, before you do the final torque on these, make sure your rocker boxes are all lined up evenly. You can check the corners. You could also run your hand down the side and you'll feel the 3 individual boxes. If any one is out or in dramatically, just adjust it. All right, everything looks good and feels good. Now we're going to tighten down those last bolts. Be mindful of how tight you are tightening these. These are aluminum, they're 1/4 Do not crank them down. All right, you've got everything cinched down. You want to tighten these 10 to 13 foot-pounds of torque. Just double check. Alrighty, so that's how you do your rear rocker box gaskets. Remember, the procedures are identical for the front with the exception of the umbrella valve. Make sure you put the umbrella valve in the hole closest to the carburetor. Everything else is identical. Once you've got the front rocker box complete, go ahead and reassemble your bike with the gas tank, the air cleaner, and your seat, and hit the road.